Hello, everyone. It's time for the Another View Roundtable. I'm Another View producer Lisa Godley, filling in for Barbara Hamley. There are a lot of hot topics taking center stage this week, from the removal of the Confederate flag from the Capitol grounds in South Carolina to the latest developments in the Bill Cosby case. The Another View Roundtable is here and ready to share their thoughts on these issues, and we'll be taking your calls right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Another View producer Lisa Godley, filling in for Barbara Hamley. It's the second Friday of the month. The Another View Roundtable is here, and I am so happy to be joined by journalist and talk show host Wil LaVeist. Hello, Will.
Hello, Lisa. How you doing?
Look
great.
Thank you. Eric Claville, PhD, History and Political Science Professor from Hampton University, so graciously agreed to fill in for Bill Thomas today. Eric, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Anything for Another View.
Hot dog. Carol Pretlow, Political Science Professor from my alma mater, Norfolk State University. Hello, Carol.
Hi, Lisa. Glad to be here.
And my favorite Virginian-Pilot columnist, Roger Chesley.
Hi, Lisa. I hope I'm not the only Virginian-Pilot columnist you know.
On a personal basis, you are. Thank you all for being here. And now, before we get started with today's discussion, I want to take a minute to remember a man who helped pave the way for so many, Andrew Heidelberg. Andrew passed away earlier this week, and for those of you who don't know, Andrew Heidelberg was one of the Norfolk 17, the first black students to integrate Norfolk public schools. Well, Barbara and me, we both had the pleasure of meeting him a while back. He, Patricia White, and other members of the Norfolk 17, they came here to WHRO to tell their stories, and this was the first time they had come together as a group to talk about their stories since the incident happened. Now, the stories were so compelling that we knew we had to capture them for others to hear, and that's what we did. We titled the documentary, The Norfolk 17, Their Story, and I'd like to share with you a brief excerpt as Andrew Heidelberg shares one of his experiences as one of the first black students to attend Norview High School.
And when I go around the hall, it always hurt me extra when I almost walk into a girl, because she would look at me and scream. And she would look at me as though she saw a monster. Yes. It was not fake. This was real in her head. I was like a monster. And she would go running down the hall. Screaming. This was every single day. It's not that we just went through this. It's really the intensity of what we went through, because I don't think people can say they understand. But you don't, in my estimation, understand unless you realize that this happened every day. Yeah. Not one. See, not one day. Right. This happened every day to me for 2.5 years. And you see, and you can't imagine to me how that affects a kid. I mean, like, I'm a 14-year-old kid at that time, and I mean, I can remember days going home, but I had some serious conversations with God. Like, why did you make me black, first of all? I mean, that was my conversation. Why did you make me black? You know, because all I wanted to do was go to school, have a good time like everybody else.
Now, Andrew Heidelberg was 74 years old. All of us here at Another View, WHRV and WHRO, would like to extend our heartfelt sympathy to his family. He will be missed, but his contribution to local, state, and national history will most definitely carry on. Now, as we move into today's topic, they have removed the Confederate battle flag from the Capitol grounds in South Carolina, both to the excitement and dismay of many. People are very passionate about this issue. The South Carolina, or the Confederate battle flag, goes to the Confederate relic Museum. State Senator Representative Lee Bright spoke out against the flag as the debate started. Representative Jenny Horn made a very compassionate plea. She was a descendant of Jefferson Davis, and she argued to take it down. Let's take a quick listen.
By removing this flag, to think that that's going to end racism, that's going to end our history of not just our state, but our nation, is to think you could go to the edge of the Atlantic and drink the ocean dry. So we're going to do what politicians do. We're going to pass something that makes us feel good, that'll make a great press conference. But at the end of the day, we will not change anything. What we'll have done is taken people that respect their Southern heritage, and we will have kicked them in the teeth.
I cannot believe that we do not have the heart in this body to do something meaningful, such as take a symbol of hate off these grounds on Friday. And if any of you vote to amend, you are ensuring that this flag will fly beyond Friday.
And now it's down. Will, is it symbolism? Is it substance? What?
You know, what I find interesting is the first gentleman that spoke, I would make the same exact argument for why the flag needs to come down. Shouldn't have been up in the first place. And for actually doing substantive work to eradicate racism. And that is what I find so interesting about this, is that he himself is identifying what the real problem is, and that's racism, but also acknowledging that there's really not much, even on his side, that they're going to do about racism. So I make the same argument that, yeah, this is politicians, again, doing what politicians tend to do things that make themselves feel good, take the low-hanging fruit, but then never really get to the substance of change, which is getting rid of racism in this country. And if we could get rid of racism in this country, I actually believe if American exceptionalism is what it's supposed to be, that we would be able to even allow the flag to fly, because I actually agree with the citizens' free speech right to fly that flag on their home or wear it on their shirt. But that we as a country could even look at that symbol and look at it as a sign of how far we've come, understanding the pain that it has brought us through, but yet still be able to accept that, you know, we're an American country going forward together. So I would make the same argument that he made, but not for the same cause. Okay.
Roger, do you think, did it take 9 lives for this to happen?
Yeah, it took 9 lives for this to happen. And, you know, in a lot of ways, I don't really consider it a great feat that the flag is down. This flag should have been down decades ago. And it's hard for me to congratulate the legislature for doing something it should have done ages ago. It went up there on the Capitol grounds during the midst of the Civil Rights Movement in the early 60s. I believe the year was 1962. And so that was definitely a slap at the face of those who wanted to end segregation, Jim Crow, second-class citizenship for black people, and for the terrorism that blacks faced in their daily lives in the southern states in this country. And so I'm glad it's down, but I don't necessarily consider it a great thing. I've been, quite frankly, a little bit disappointed in all of the attention that has had to have gone to it the past few weeks. I mean, there are a lot of situations plaguing us in this country in terms of race, class, employment, still discrepancies in the way African Americans are treated compared with other races, especially whites, in the justice system and the like. And it seems to me, again, low-hanging fruit. Symbols do matter, but this was a symbol that should have been taken care of years ago. And it says something, I think, not too pretty about us in this country still, or at least in some states in this country still.
Okay, Eric, I saw you over here shaking your head.
Sure. I definitely agree with Roger 100% that what this flag represents being Southern heritage. and what Will was spoke about with the politician. First of all, I think it's a great thing that just took place, the flag coming down. I would have never thought in my lifetime, okay, after what African Americans and we as people have been through, that we'll see the election of our black president and the re-election of our first black president. We'll see a black family in the White House, different persons in leadership positions, influencing public policy, and the Confederate flag coming down. I mean, I remember that flag. I remember the Dukes of Hazzard. I remember individuals around my state of Louisiana and my city and school wearing that flag. So to see the about face of politicians and so forth. But you're exactly right. The Southern heritage of the Confederate flag, it's a symbol for hate, very similar to the Nazi flag. As a matter of fact, individuals that that carry the Confederate flag and Nazi flag, they interchange and utilize those flags interchangeably. But also, I'm glad Roger brought out the fact that the flag came up during the height of the civil rights movement, okay, to end segregation, the heritage of Southern heritage, what individuals believe that support the flag, which is slavery, terrorism of African Americans, and so forth. But lastly, and I'll come back to this point, politicians, it's not their job to implement things of substance. It's the job of the people that they represent, okay? Because of the three rules of politics. The three rules of politics for a politician is to get elected. Second rule is to stay elected. Third rule is to get reelected. And do whatever you have to do in between there to make that happen.
Well, I'm glad you brought up you were talking about the political aspect of it, because people are saying now that it was the whole Confederate flag issue that caused Jim Beasley the election in South Carolina. So as a political science person, Carl, I want to ask you, do you think that lawmakers are going to lose their seats in South Carolina over this, those that supported bringing the flag down?
No, I really don't think they're going to lose their seats. I think that some of them should lose their seats. And I think the test should be, where do we go from here? Okay, we got this. We understand the symbolism of the flag, the impact it has on varying communities. But if you're looking at the impact, look at those of us African Americans who were financially impacted by the situation, who were educationally impacted. Now, so what? I'm sorry about your flag. Move on. What you gonna do about these issues?
Okay.
I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
Since we're talking about symbolism, and this is the hot topic of the day, and the flag has come down. What next? What else? What happens? What happens next? Do we focus on other symbols here that are tied to the Confederate flag?
Well, Lisa, it's interesting what this all discussion has brought about, and how there have been moves by Councilman Whitaker and Mayor Wright in Portsmouth to get rid of the monument there. And I'm against, and pun intended, I'm against whitewashing history. I think that there's a need that it's one thing to say that the state is putting a sanction on a Confederate battle flag at the Capitol or on its own license plates. It's quite another thing to say this is still part of our history in all of its ingloriousness, and we should not be demolishing history. So I have no problem with that Confederate monument that is in downtown Portsmouth. As curious as it is, the Monument Walk in Richmond that has so many greats of that era there, plus Arthur Ashe, who seems somewhat out of place, quite frankly. You have a tennis player with all of these military men there. I take it for what it is. It took place, and if that's there, that's fine. I have no problem with it staying up. And in some ways, I think we are doing if we try to get rid of those things. So on the one hand, free speech in your personal endeavors, free speech on private property, which is the monument was given over to this group in Portsmouth. And it would cost a lot of money, first of all, to try to buy it back. And, oh, by the way, there's a state law that says you cannot get rid of some of these monuments. So, yeah, let's have some reasonableness of this. Let's talk to each other instead of talking at each other for a change as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think Roger brings up a very good point for this as being a part of history. But I think that this gives an opportunity to tell the whole story. Many times these monuments have told as Roger stated, a glorious aspect of the Confederacy and so forth. But let's tell the other story. Let's tell the other side of it, how this flag and the Confederacy represented the terrorism of a group of people and the idea, as Alexander Hamilton Stevens, which was the vice president of the Confederacy, when he made his cornerstone speech in 1861 in Savannah, Georgia, he said the great truth, okay? The great truth is the Negro is not equal to the white man. And in the Constitution, which he helped to draft for the Confederacy, he stated that slavery was a part of the Southern heritage, that they were fighting to keep that. So let's tell that story. Let's be honest about it. And if you really want to understand the whole story and how each side feels, you have to do that. You mentioned earlier, where do we go from here? I think that the bringing down of the Confederate flag represents the Great Awakening, just as the Birmingham bombing of the church did, that killed those young girls in the church, those 4 little girls. I think that there is a momentum shift now toward looking at what I call phase 2 of civil rights 2.0, if we can use it in our modern day terms. Well, now we have to look at those families that were left behind, the economic. What I think is the greatest civil rights issue of our time is education. Public education and access to education affordability is hitting people of color more so, those individuals that are poor communities and the like, more so than anything, with all these different testing standards and the like. So I think that where we can go from here is to tell the whole story and to implement and go forward with Civil Rights 2.0.
Okay.
I think exactly what Eric and Roger said is on point, and that, again, doing more low-hanging fruit things of pulling monuments is essentially doing the same thing that those who put the flag back up and are now saying it's not about hate, it's about heritage, is doing the same thing. You cannot parse out racism from the heritage. So anyone who is saying it's not about hate, it's about heritage, is just fundamentally denying and dismissing our pain. It's so appropriate that you started this show with the Norfolk 17 Andy, who I considered a friend when I learned that he died. I spent time with him and all of them. As the editor of Mixed Magazine, I had an opportunity to tell their story when I was Mixed Magazine with the Virginia-Pilot at the 50th anniversary of the commemoration. And when they saw the magazine, and they, like you all probably experienced, when they were able to tell their story fully,
right,
because it had never been done, we hugged each other and all of our eyes welled up because of the pain. And why was I able to relate to their pain? Because I went through the same thing in the 70s in New York under Old Glory. Busing in New York City public school system, I was terrorized at 14 years old. As Andy talked about being terrorized. So those who are saying it's not about slavery, they're fundamentally just dismissing the pain, because all of the documents say that it's about slavery. Those who want to say that, well, it was re-erected and it was about heritage, they're fundamentally dismissing the pain because it was resurrected around the time of Strom Thurmond and the Dixiecrats. And then in South Carolina, it was 61 in response to what's going on in the Civil Rights Movement. 61, okay, the Norfolk 17 integrated in 59. So what do you think that was all about? And they were terrorized. That was, let's be honest, that was domestic terrorism. Andy went through it, and these are older people. Now their stories are passing on, and you talk to them today, and you still see their eyes welling up with tears.
right.
You feel it in my voice right now, because I'm remembering like it was yesterday what happened and what I went through as a 14-year-old. So what I challenge those who want to fly the flag, that I'm saying I support your right, free speech, to fly your flag and your property is Roger was saying. I support that right. But while you're doing it, don't dismiss my pain. don't to use one of our other flags. Don't tread on me while you're throwing your flag up.
Don't tread on my history.
Yeah, let's tell the whole, as Eric said, let's tell the whole history, and then let it be a monument to how far we have come, how far true American exceptionalism. So why do you need to dismiss my pain in order to celebrate your heritage? Why do you need that?
Okay, Carol, I saw you shaking your head.
Yeah, I agree with all of it, and I think that that society tends to dismiss even the subtle forms of pain. I went to a segregated school, one room, that had few textbooks. They had to get the textbooks from the white school at the time, and there were pages missing sometimes. And then, of course, here comes the black community, particularly my father, who said, look, so what, that's pages missing. Move on. You learned this, and this. So in surviving, they're built a toughness, but still the pain is there. I think, as I sit here talking to each of us, the pain is still there. And part of that pain is anger. What would have happened if we had not had to go through that? Where would we have been? How far would we have progressed? Can't go back, but we can go forward if you deal with the educational system and look at the inequities there. If you deal with the housing situation and the inequities there, let's take it little bit by little bit and deal with it. And that's where the politicians should come in.
And to me, if it's a symbol, and symbols do matter. And I've talked recently about, in my own comment about the Washington Redskins and how I do not like that name. I think it's a slur. And, yes, these things matter. But how do we go deeper than that? How do we make things better for everybody down in South Carolina? Are we educating our children? Are we being fair for both whites and blacks when they're arrested by police, when there's decisions made into whether they're charged, into are they being treated the same way for the same crimes when they get to the courtroom? Are we given the same job opportunities? And, of course, it's not just a white-black dichotomy now. Of course, there's Latinos, there's Asians as well, Native Americans. How do we get to make ourselves a better country? I love this country. I love the fact that I think we fall down, we get up, we try to do better. A lot of countries don't do that. And I'm glad we do have that opportunity. But if we're not committed to try to keep moving forward, then I think that's where you get the sense of disenchantment, the sense of not feeling that we're all in this together.
Okay.
And Roger, you mentioned something about America, and I think that for some individuals look at America as being only for white America, and then everyone else here is just a visitor and be happy with what you're receiving.
That's racism. That's the definition of racism. You just defined it. That's racism.
You heard it here. The definition of racism is defined on another view. But the point I want to make about America is that, at this point in our time in history, we're the center of world power and world influence. Our pop culture influences the world. What we do influences the world, our policy and so forth. So if we get it right here in America, the world is looking, and everyone else will start to get it right. What happened in South Africa, they took note of what happened here in America, okay? What happened, they also took note in South America and so forth, in Brazil, where most of the Africans that were brought from the Gold Coast were taken on slave ships and deposited there in South America and Brazil. So if we get it right, then everyone else will take note. But I want to just 30 seconds to talk about, I think there's going to be a major backlash. And the politicians, Carol, I have to disagree with you. Some politicians in South Carolina are going to lose their seats. For voting, oh, yeah, for voting for voting to take that flag down. There's going to be a major backlash. There's going to be a major response in support of the flag and the heritage. So, just buckle your seatbelts and let's see what happens.
I want to get on to talk a little bit about that backlash in just a second. But if you're just joining us, we're talking about the Confederate flag. Is it heritage or hate? And We saw just what happened in South Carolina. It has come down. We're talking with the Another View Roundtable pundits, Wil LaVeist, Eric Claville, who's filling in for Bill Thomas, Carol Pretlow, and Roger Chesley. What are your thoughts? Give us a call at 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. You know, Eric, I was surprised. I shouldn't have been surprised, but Governor Nikki Haley's Facebook page yesterday was just flooded with people who were not happy about the legislature's decision to bring down the flag. I mean, the comments just went on, and there weren't a lot of positive ones.
Sure. Again, that should not be surprising for anyone sitting around this table. You know, the legacy of slavery, the legacy of segregation, Jim Crow, the legacy of the Confederacy, it rings loud here in what we call the regional South, okay? And what I call the real South in Louisiana, Mississippi, where I'm from, where Jefferson Davis, president of Confederacy is from, where we named a parish after him as well. you know, it's alive and well. Okay, and there are individuals that really believe the lies that they were told about their status here in America. And they really believe the great truth, the so-called great truth that Hamilton Stevens spoke about in Savannah, Georgia, and they're still holding on to that. The scary thing about it is that they're educating their children the same way. And that's where the education part comes in. We have to tell the whole story and understand both sides. And once the truth comes out, you know, it's something about revealing the truth, you know, in any situation. Once it comes out, now you can really deal with the pain. You can deal with the situation and circumstances better.
Okay. Let's take a call. Lance is on the line from Newport News. Lance, thanks for calling Another View.
Thank you for taking my call today. And thank your guests, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. I totally agree. I believe that everyone has a right to fly a symbol of their choice on their own property, but for a state organization or state property that's supposed to represent everyone, they should reflect and be conscientious of the fact that that flag does cause pain and has different meanings to different people. I also believe, as a young black man, that you're right. Everything you said, we have the legacy of what slavery did to our community, but I think we have to get past that. I think that we're in a remarkable country. We have access to internet, to libraries, to resources that the poor in other countries wish they could have access to. And in our own community, with or without the help of politicians, we should be doing big brother programs, big sister programs, mentoring, take it in our own hands to make things better for ourselves. You know, that we have to move on as well, not forget and not fight for better things, but also take those things for ourselves. And I'll take my comments off the air.
Okay, thank you, Lance, for calling. Eric has his pin up. Go ahead.
You know, thank you, caller, for your comments. I just want to address one part of it. You mentioned we need to get past it. And that's usually the comment that individuals that don't want to deal with the legacy and the truth behind these issues say. Well, you know, that happened a long time ago. Let's get past it. Let's move on and do something else. But the reason why we're experiencing the neglect and the things that we're experiencing in our communities is because of this legacy. It is those politicians that drew the red lines, that redlined economic districts and where black individuals could live. It was those that decided where individuals could and could not sell. It is not just haphazardly that over 90% of state contracts go to white males in the state of Virginia. Okay, wealth. Okay, and we're dealing with the economic part of it. Okay, so we can't get past, you know, what we don't know until we address it first. Honestly, we recognize it, we talk about it, and we incorporate that into our history books. Okay, yes, George Washington chopped down the cherry tree, but he did some other stuff too. Okay, that we need to talk about, and all other great politicians that we have in our history as well. So, caller, thank you, but we have to deal with it earnestly.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. Again, people need to understand that slavery existed before racism. The problem that continues is racism. Yes, slavery did not begin in the United States. Slavery still exists in other countries. It's not based and rooted in racism. However, racism started here. And so racism is a system, a belief backed by policies and practices that says black people and other people of color should permanently be at second-class status at the privilege of whites. And so when you read these documents about leaving the Union and all that, it's what it keeps saying is, look, there's this hierarchy, and we want to maintain this. And that's why after the Civil War, it intensified with Jim Crow, the black codes and all, to maintain the hierarchy. So the actual practices, policies of redlining, maintains that hierarchy. So you keep having these problems. West Baltimore, you can track the situation in West Baltimore directly to redlining. You can look at Newport News and see why did Newport News develop the way it developed. It's about redlining. You had to live in this particular area. And then you see the resources that are afforded to certain places and not other places. And again, I'm telling you, I grew up in the North, and New York City is one of the most segregated cities on the planet. And I mean, this is the issue, is racism. So you can't parse out racism from heritage. Just stop doing that. And you just stop saying we just got to get over it, because there are policies and practices that have determined people's outcomes. Roger was mentioning Native Americans. Do you know anything about the Trail of Tears? Yeah. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, horrific.
That's not something you just, they didn't just get. Do you realize we're in Virginia, where the nation began, and none of the Virginia tribes are federally recognized?
Until this past week.
Yeah.
Until this past week. Oh my God. Well, but do you look at the legacy of that happening? Because one individual decided, Plecker, official of the state, decided you're either going to be black or you're white.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. And I'll just add on to the whole issue of redlining. You talk about how it is for a lot of people, wealth is gained, passed down from their parents, but often through property. So if you are in neighborhoods where the property wasn't allowed to appreciate or did not appreciate substantially, then you're not really passing down wealth from one generation to another. If you're not being allowed to get the types of home loans that other individuals are getting, then you're not necessarily allowed to either get a bigger house or to make substantial improvements to your house. And so, you say, okay, well, we haven't necessarily, as a people, progressed as far as we probably should have. But it wasn't like when slavery ended, things became hunky-dory. It wasn't exactly like after Reconstruction ended that things got better. 1896, Plessy v. Ferguson, the legacy of Jim Crow, lynchings, and the like.
Don't forget the legacy of Dred Scott.
Yeah, okay.
The one that started it all.
So, we've had to go through a lot. Not everybody has necessarily progressed as well as we've liked. And the question is today, America, what are you going to do with all of us who are trying to be part of this great country
that we all love?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I listen to, and again, I disagree with you, because I think those same people who are voting in South Carolina, they might not return those same people, but they may return people just like them, unless there's some universal citizenship or universal voting, giving people the right, come 18, get out there, vote. Don't go through all these dynamics about what line and who's in what district. Just let everybody vote.
Well, that's not going to happen.
And Lisa, real quick, to something that Roger just said, something real to make it real practical and plain, right?
Okay.
If you have a house, right, a lot of people finance their children's educations in what way? By taking equity out of their home. If you don't have equity to take out of your home, that makes if education is the pathway to freedom and prosperity, and you don't have a home to tap into, then that's going to have a major effect. So what are a lot of the students now in Norfolk State facing? What are a lot of students in a lot of places facing? Have the intelligence to finish, don't have the
money.
funds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I
in debt
understand that.
And in debt.
All right, let's shift gears.
Okay.
Take a breath.
Okay, on Tuesday, a federal judge sided with the Associated Press, which has sought to release a deposition in 2005, the civil case brought against Bill Cosby. And in his sworn testimony, he admitted to obtaining several prescriptions for Quaaludes in the 1970s with the intention of giving them to women he wanted to have sex with. And lots of things have come up as a result of that, including resurfacing a lot. Cosby's 1969 album, a clip from the album It's True, which features him talking about the effects of a drug called Spanish fly.
You know anything about Spanish fly? No, tell me about it. Well, there's this girl, Crazy Mary. You put some in her drink, man. She, yeah, Spanish, oh, yeah, that's really groovy, man. Spanish fly is groovy, yeah, boy. From then on, man, anytime you see a girl, well, yeah, it's a Spanish fly, boy. Go to a party, see 5 girls standing alone. Boy, if I had a whole jug of Spanish fly, I'd light that corner up over there.
Lots of conversation. One thing I've heard a lot of was whether or not the judge should have even opened the deposition. Eric?
Yeah. First of all, let me say that my heart goes out to any of those women that were victims of any acts to be proven that Bill Cosby did to them. No person should go through anything against their will. My heart goes out to them. Also, like to say that I remember Bill Cosby growing up. From Fat Albert, The Cosby Show, Different World, and how it influenced my life in a truly positive way. And in learning the revelations of Bill Cosby, in my mind, I'm able to separate the good from the bad. The images that he wanted to portray for America and what he actually lived in his own personal life. But as far as the legal aspect of it, I'm very, very intrigued of how a deposition in a civil case that was sealed and settled. And obviously, when you go through a settlement of any case, there's going to be a especially one that involves that type of money. There's going to be an airtight agreement that you're not talking about the case. Those documents are probably sealed, and especially a public figure like this. I haven't read the rationale of the federal judge, but I am going to read it to find out why. And I think this federal judge set a precedent now of information to be released from civil or criminal cases against individuals for allegations for something. And again, I'm talking with the legal aspect now, all right, of this of issues. So to me, that is something to keep an eye out for. And I'm going to take a look at it because, again, I've never heard of anything like that before happen legally.
Yeah, and there are a lot of calls for different things right now. You were talking about you were able to separate it.
Sure.
A lot of people aren't.
Right.
It's difficult for me to separate my image of Cosby, the man, Cosby, the public figure. This was the guy I saw growing up on I Spy. He and Robert Cope. He is probably one of the first black actors in a leading role on a TV series. Now, this is the guy we came to love on Fat Albert and on the Cosby Show, and it says something about the demons some people have. It says something about what power, money, and status allows you to do. It is amazing to me. Obviously, people must have known some of these skeletons in his background for some time. And the fact that he was able to pretty much keep a lid on it tells, I think, something of his ruthlessness in shouting, of he and his legal team, in shouting down and pressuring anybody who dared say that he wasn't all he claimed to be. And the fact that it took until 2014, 2015 for really his past to really kind of catch up with him, says I think it's just pretty much amazing. I believe that he came to Howard University while I was there when we opened our TV station. I think it was 1980, and just the aura of him, the popularity of him. It is just so, to now know that there was something seems to be fairly sinister going on with all that. It does say something about power, wealth, and basically being able to shut down anybody who wants to criticize you or to bring allegations against you.
Yeah, I think Roger makes a very important point that I think this is about power as well. Yeah. Power in wealth in Hollywood. So not just Cosby himself, but others, that are able to keep individuals quiet. And I've heard interviews of women that talked about, well, I wanted to say something, but this was Bill Cosby. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was a power broker, in the entertainment industry. Or some people that said, I did say something, but they said, this is Bill Cosby, okay? In the entertainment industry, he had major power. So I think this is also a larger discussion about women being victimized by the draws of fame and power, and when something happens to them as horrible that happened to some of these women that they're claiming, it also shows where we in Hollywood, well, Hollywood itself probably needs to improve as well in addressing these issues of women and violence.
Will, is this it? I mean, will people stop watching the Cosby Show reruns, and they're talking about lifting his star from? Is this it for the legacy?
Yeah, I think his legacy will never be the same. But I still think the process needs to go forward of him actually being convicted of something, because settling something out of court does not necessarily mean that you actually did it. And even what was revealed in the depositions doesn't clearly say that he actually did it. So I think, as Eric said, my heart goes out to those women as a father of a 22-year-old. And a lot of these women were in that age range, and even one that has filed a case now is as young as 15. I mean, it as a parent, as a father, it just boils me. But they all need to have their day in court, I believe, before people start making definitive decisions about what to pull down, what to change, and all of that. And I think that one of the other curious things for me is, as we were saying, this mix of power and the fact that Cosby's persona in terms of entertainment and on television, the projection of what he was on television is what was also feeding this source over here of preventing people from believing these women. And so in that sense, and we know as journalists, when you become a public figure like that, that's when it becomes, okay, it's open game now. And I think that's actually a good thing, because you can't have it both ways. Because he was America's dad and perceived that way is what made people less likely to believe what these women were saying. So now once you get out there and you start becoming the moralist and talking about what low-income African Americans should do and this and that and the other, and you start moralizing, now it opens up scrutiny to your moral character. So I think in that sense, and I'm interested to hear about the legalities and all of that, but I think in that sense, it's a good thing. Once you get out there like that, oh yeah, it's open season. As a journalist, it's open season. It's on now.
One of the things you were talking about, will it actually get to the criminal realm? Well, part of the problem is that some of the statute of limitations has expired on some of the charges that could be brought. And you can understand the reluctance of women who have accused him of feeling squeamish of actually trying to get this into court, not knowing if they were going to be able to stand up to the public pressure, the public scrutiny that was going to come from accusing somebody like Bill Cosby of some of these charges. So I don't know that we're ever going to have that type of airing. And also, I just saw today that there's a push to take away, I think, his White House Medal of Freedom. There's some people calling for that. Now that this has come out, Leonard Pitts, a columnist who has written about this, it probably will hit newspapers next week. He talks about there were actually some issues that Cosby had brought up in this whole let's try to do better, black people. He didn't necessarily agree with the scolding, but there were some issues there that said, hey, we need to work on ourselves more. We need to do some things more. And now that's going to pretty much go by the wayside. It's unfortunate, but by the same token, you can't dismiss these allegations.
And it almost seems disingenuous because it makes you wonder, okay, why did he begin to start doing that? Because that pound cake speech and all of that happened around the same time of this case that was settled out of court. So it starts to make you wonder, no one is all good or all bad. We are all walking contradictions. But it just starts to make you wonder, okay, what was the real motive behind some of the things now that you're doing? All of a sudden around this time, when you are in civil court, now you are putting the attention on what other people ought to do and so forth. I mean, and again, we know comedians, we know what they do. They talk about their own experiences. You just played, the Spanish Fly thing.
Right.
Now, I mean, all of that stuff, it just sounds very, it feels very, oily, right now.
And very quickly, I'm wondering, and Roger brought it out, and I'll take a look at that article, but what was the straw that broke the camel's back, which caused now individuals to come and start looking into his past to see if there was something there? Because this was going on probably since 1969 from the tape, or probably earlier. But all of a sudden, in 2005, when you start to talk about empowering African Americans, again with the scolding, did that set an alarm off on someone, or did tee someone off to say, we're going to get you?
I don't know, but it still took several years for that really to get a wide airing, because it seemed like it was sparked by a comedian, another black comedian, basically saying, Bill Cosby is saying all this stuff, but hey, this is a guy who's been raping women, and that seemed to be a catalyst.
And they kept running with it.
What are you thinking, Carol? You're the prettiest one sitting there.
Thank you. Am I the smartest
Lisa can't offer an opinion, so,
But what I was thinking was, okay, there are several dynamics here, of course you know that, but the separation of this man who was a family man, and as long as he was in the mold of doing a comedy series, I don't think most of us were looking beyond, he's on TV, he's playing a character. What he did in his personal life, okay. But once he started moralizing, then that is incentive. Okay, who are you to tell me what
that's what
I
the judge
should
said.
do?
That's why the judge said
Let
was one of the
me
reasons
look
he opened the
at
deposition.
you. And so with that, then the public says, okay, there are dynamics of this man that I didn't know. Then you hear, 40-some women?
Yes, the number grows.
And
maybe as much as
100. At least a couple of dozen.
Yeah, but Lisa, that's not a legal standard to release documents that was sealed and settled under a set of laws in a civil case. So,
but as you hear the numbers grow, you say, oh my God. This, even without knowing the dynamics of who is accusing who of what and what the circumstances are, the fact that there's power in numbers. And you begin to say, oh my God, this is not the Cosby Show. This is not, this is real life. Mm-hmm. And so we all begin to question and say, okay, where there's smoke, there might be fire.
And so many of the allegations followed such a similar pattern. Such a similar,
exactly.
I woke up and, I couldn't remember what happened, or my clothes were around me.
There were a lot of
That's the Spanish Fly bit.
Yeah.
That he said.
So you're saying he had a lot of practice?
We've got about 3 minutes left, and I want to say something about this young lady before it's all over. Missy Copeland is 32 years old and has already been featured as one of Time Magazine's most influential people. She has starred in an Under Armour ad and has authored a best-selling memoir, Life in Motion, An Unlikely Ballerina. Since she started at 13, she had no idea what she would face. Years and years would pass, and she would remain the only Black in her dance company.
More so when I was younger, it was just very different for me to go from living in a motel with my 5 siblings to all of a sudden stepping into this studio atmosphere where I was kind of put into this situation where these girls were my friends, but they came from money and they lived in these big houses and they went away in the summers, and I think that was the time that I felt the most really different from the people around me, and it was embarrassing. When you're a young child, you just want to fit in. That was probably the hardest time for me, but ballet is very much so not just about separating people because of their race, but because of class. And it's a difficult world to be a part of, but when we all get up there on the stage, if you have the talent, we're all just dancers up there.
We congratulate Mrs. D. Copeland, her new role as the American Ballet Theater's prima ballerina, and we wish her well.
I think it's very instructive, and I think it was the Under Armour ad where she recites the rejection letter that she got. That at already 13, she didn't have the right body build. And we're not talking about somebody who is fat. We're talking about somebody who wasn't a waif, who had curves, but she was already being rejected. And to know, it also says something about be careful about trying to spit on somebody's dreams at such an early age, because obviously she had the talent, the wherewithal, and the ability to get to this point. And it's a very powerful commercial. I think she's a beautiful woman. She is a beautiful woman. The parts that I've seen of her dancing, just amazing.
She is amazing. She's amazing to watch. It's just so interesting to me. We're still seeing so many firsts still. It's 2015.
Yeah, because that's the other side of it, is that that she wasn't the first that was capable.
Sure.
The first, and a lot of it is the first, when you hear first, it was the first that actually had the opportunity to be the first. And so, again, but coming from the very beginning of this show, that is our American heritage, that the people who want to celebrate the other side of this total American picture need to recognize. That's our heritage. That's when you hear our Black national anthem, that is what that anthem is all about. It's all about endurance, despite how you've been trod on and all of that, and still being able to overcome.
Thank you. And with that, I'm sorry.
Congratulations,
We celebrate you.
And that is our show for this Friday. If you'd like to hear it again or share it with a friend, please go to our website at anotherviewradio.org. If you haven't already, please sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Thank you for spending your noonday hour with us today. For producer Danny Epperson, who so graciously agreed to fill in for me, audio engineer Victor Bowen, and Kamaria Mason, who answered our phones, and my wonderful interns who helped me with so much of this week's research. Thank you so much, Jessica and Autumn. I'm Lisa Godley. Barbara will be back next week when we'll talk to author Yolanda Gaunt Covenus about her humorous book, Child Please, How Mama's Old School Lessons Helped Me Check Myself Before I Wrecked Myself. So make an appointment to tune in next Friday when we'll get together again for another view.